Hey everyone, so I wanted to walk through this assignment with you guys and really just introduce you guys to Illustrator a little bit. I know that some of you guys are going to come with a lot of different backgrounds here. So some of you guys may have used Illustrator, some of you guys maybe haven't. And the purpose of this assignment and really this entire class is to get everyone up to the same level. We all come from different backgrounds. Some of you guys may have had architecture backgrounds. Some of you guys may have psychology backgrounds. Maybe you have a design background. All of that's okay. If some of these things feel maybe a little bit more advanced to you, just know that you're going to sort of work your way into it. And with a little bit of refinement over time, you're going to get there. If some of these things feel maybe a little bit simple to you, I challenge you, maybe not to push it too far, but I challenge you to maybe think about the constraints that you're using. For this assignment in particular, how can you complete it with 13 points or less? Those are some of the challenges that I encourage you to think about. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to start by creating a new file. And for this assignment in particular, you need to have a 5-inch by 5-inch artboard. That sort of translates to 12.7 centimeters by 12.7 centimeters in case you're normal and use the metric system. But I'll start here by making my artboard 5 inches by 5 inches. You only need one artboard for this. So for example, if you wanted more than one artboard, you could toggle this here. For this assignment, I only need it to be one artboard. Orientation here, let's talk about that for a second. Let's say that I wasn't using a square artboard. Let's say it was an 8.5 by 11 or something like that. In fact, let's start there. I can choose whether I want that to be portrait or horizontal orientation. So that's really all that's doing there. Let me change this back. From there, bleed. What does that mean? This is a little bit advanced and mostly for printing. When you go to print a file, let's say that you have a color that runs all the way off the page. Bleed is really there to make sure that you have the color extending beyond the page so that it's not trimmed right onto the page. It's a little bit advanced. We're not going to get into that too much in this class, but at least now you kind of know what that is. For right now, let's leave the color mode as RGB color. You probably learned a little bit about that in module 1, where we went over design elements and principles, a little bit of color theory in there. Leave your raster effects as 300 ppi. It's generally best to design to the highest pixels per inch within Illustrator, and then you can sort of export at smaller PPIs later. And really, the default here is that 300 ppi is primarily for print, even though we're working in RGB color mode, I understand. 72 or 150 would mostly be for web, so just keep an eye out for that. Preview mode, you can leave that as default. No need to change that. So cool. There's our artboard. Let's go ahead and get started. I've already downloaded my Apple logo, so let me go and pull that really quick. You can just drag and drop the image into the artboard here. Not a big deal. Mine's a little bit low res. That's not a big deal. That's kind of the difference between Illustrator and Photoshop. Photoshop, you're working with pixels. It is sort of a raster-based software. So any image that you pull from the internet for the most part, which is going to be a JPEG or a PNG, something like that, those are going to be raster-based images. They're based on pixels. The benefit that Illustrator provides is that it is a vector-based software, meaning that there are no pixels. It is based on line work. So really, that is where the split between the use of something like Illustrator and Photoshop comes into play. If you're more comfortable in one versus the other, the point of this assignment is that it must be done in Illustrator. So it might be uncomfortable if you've never used Illustrator before, but I encourage you to use it. And if you have questions, feel free to reach out. All right, so the first thing that I'm going to do, I've already done it. I've placed the provided Apple logo on my artboard. Now, one thing that I want you guys to get in the habit of is really clean layering because it's going to help you. Here, I'm going to title my layer as reference image. There we go. And the reason that I want to do that is because I can create separate layers within Illustrator so that I can use a reference image like this. But if I go to sort of add things on there, it's going to move around, which is quite annoying. So I actually want to take that image and lock it. I don't want it to move. So now when I come over here and I click and I drag, nothing's going to move, which is kind of what we want. We want this to stay in one spot so that we can work with it and sort of trace the Apple logo without it moving around on us, because that can be kind of hard. Think of it like sketching on a piece of paper or sketching over a piece of paper and you're trying to trace something. If the thing behind the paper is moving, it makes it a little bit hard to trace. So we've locked that reference image. We're good there. Now I want to create a new layer, and I want to title this layer tracing. And that'll sort of reveal itself in a minute why we want to have these separate layers, because now that this layer is locked, I can't add anything to it. I can always come back and unlock it, and this will be movable, but I want to keep that locked so that I can work on a separate layer and then eventually turn this layer off, and all you'll see is the artwork. I'll show you that in a minute. Before we get started, I kind of want to give you guys a quick rundown of some of the tools that you guys are going to be using in this particular assignment. We've already learned a little bit about artboards. Artboards are the space here behind the image. If I wanted to make a new artboard in here, because you can have more than one artboard, that's totally fine. What I can do is I can come over here. You've got a bunch of different tools. I'm going to try to break down each of them as we go through module 2 here. But this guy right here is called your artboard your artboard tool. It's a little bit nondescript from a visual perspective, but if you hover over any of these tools over here, they'll always tell you what it is that you're working with. And to give you guys a lay of the land, my Illustrator might look a little bit different than yours. That's okay. I have mine set up where all of my extra tools, which for you guys will probably by default show up over here, I've moved them over to this side. All of these are customizable. You can kind of build your own software here. I have a reason why I did that. You'll kind of learn what each of these do as you use the software a little bit. But the reason that I moved all of these over here is for efficiency. When you are working in the design industry, a lot of what we do is based on very quick and rapid things. We have deadlines and we have to meet them. So for me, if I had all of this stuff all the way over here, in order for me to just simply, I don't know, change the color, if I have to select something, change the color, I'm kind of moving across the screen a lot. So I've tried to consolidate my movements just to one side. If I have to grab a tool and then change something, it's all over here. I don't have to go all the way across the screen. So just some points for efficiency there. So we talked about artboards a little bit. Let's select the artboard tool. If I want to duplicate it, I can hold Option or Alt if you're on a PC, Option if you're on a Mac, and just slide it over. It's going to give you this just because what I've done is I've taken my Apple layer and I've locked it and I've hidden it. So if you have nothing on your artboard, that won't show up. But I'm going to hit OK. And notice that it's a little offset, right? If I want those to be aligned, you can select both, hold Shift to select more than one thing or deselect more than one thing. And then up here, you've got your alignment tools. So if I want it to align to top, I can align it to the top. If I want this one to come down and align to the bottom, I can align it to the bottom. You get the picture. Mess with these. You really can't break it. That's kind of the beauty of working at this stage, is there's nothing you can break. So there I've got two artboards. I don't need it though, so I'm just going to hit Shift-O on the keyboard. That also pulls up your artboard tool. Again, if you hover, you'll see what the quick keys are there for how you can access that tool. So Shift-O to pull up the artboard. I'm going to just delete it. If you wanted, let's say, a different size artboard, you can change that. Let's say I want 8.5 by 11. Oh, not 8.5 by 111. Let me move that over. 8.5 by 1. There we go. So now I've got a 5 by 5 artboard, an 8.5 by 11. You can have virtually as many artboards as you want, so long as it fits within this really large gray space here. So just a couple of things for you to know about artboards. Now, from there, let's talk about layers. We've already sort of seen ourselves working with that. You can turn layers on and off. You can lock them and unlock them. You can change the name of them. You can expand these layers to see what's inside of them. I'll come back to that in a little bit. You can even double click and you can change the color that that layer is specified as. You can make it a template, which you probably won't really need a whole lot of. You can show or hide it, preview or not preview it. You can lock it or unlock it. This one's actually really useful. Let's say that you have a bunch of guides set up within Illustrator. We'll talk about those in the future. But let's say that you want to be able to see them, but when you go to print it, you don't want those to print out. You can actually turn printing off based on a single layer. So that's kind of nice. I use that a lot. You can also dim certain layers, but really these are kind of the standard settings that you'll want for a layer. That's basically it on layers. From there, you've got your selection tool. This is probably the tool you're going to be using the most, so you should probably get really comfortable with using the keyboard command V. I know that's a weird letter. Don't ask me why they made it the letter V. You can customize it to whatever you want, but be careful because you can change things and it'll override other really helpful keyboard commands. But V is the selection tool. And then you have the direct selection tool. This will come in handy when we start using the pen tool. So I'm going to circle back on this one a little bit, but there is a difference between selection and direct selection. So just try to keep those separate in your mind. Direct selection is A, selection is V. Get comfortable with those keyboard commands. You'll use them a lot. From there, the pen tool, which is this guy right here, not to be confused with the curvature tool. They look awfully similar. Just the regular old pen tool will do. This is P on the keyboard. This is what we're going to be using for this particular assignment the most. This is how we're going to be building our shapes. This is how I recommend building all of your shapes. If you've used Illustrator before, you might know a little bit about like live trace or maybe even the brush tool or the pencil tool. Don't use those for this assignment. I will be able to tell. I've done this for quite some time. Be sure to use the pen tool. That is really the challenge here because the pen tool, if you know how to use it, becomes really, really helpful. From there, down here, you've got your color options. I remember the first time that I used Illustrator and being really frustrated with understanding how the color works. And every once in a while, it still frustrates me. But if you come up here, you're going to see a couple of different swatches. These are kind of the best way to work. We're really only going to be using black in this particular assignment. But the difference here is that I want you to know the difference between a fill, which is this sort of solid color, and then a stroke, which is sort of this outlined color. I'll go over the differences between those. You can toggle them, but I'll talk about that in a minute. All right, so we've got my reference image here. Now, it's really important that you know what layer you're working on, because if I go to use the pen tool and you see this little pencil icon with the X in it, that's because that layer's locked. I can't work on that layer. So I need to come over here and select tracing in order for me to be able to draw on this layer, okay? Here's the best thing that you ought to know. As illustrators, we tend to get, I'm gonna stop sharing for a moment, we tend to get what we call claw hand. And that claw hand is because our hand is almost always positioned on Command and Shift or Command and Z. And the reason that we do that is because Command and Shift is sort of a really common keyboard command that we use. You won't need it too much for this particular assignment, but you will need Command for this assignment. And then Command Z is really important. And I think most of us know what that does. It undoes things. So get really comfortable with just having your fingers in that sort of claw position over Command Z and Command Shift. The resting position should be probably above Shift, and then you can sort of move over to Z. So I'm going to try to do my best at calling out what I'm pressing when I press it. But if you miss something, just let me know. I'll come back and I'll let you know. All right, so we have our tracing layer selected. I'm going to zoom in a little bit. And really all we're going to do is we are going to trace this logo. I have P selected, which is my pen tool. And I usually like starting over on this side. And the best description that I can give for using the pen tool is think of it like you're throwing a football Americano, not football European, or really anywhere else in the world. What I mean by that is when you throw a football, you have to throw it in an arc, right? And then you've got to imagine your teammate is on the other side of that arc, and then you can sort of catch it and meet up with the ball, right? Sort of a weird analogy, but for whatever reason, it usually works. It sort of clicks in people's minds. And the pen tool works really nicely when you're trying to create these nice, smooth, curved lines. You can also use it for straight lines, but really it shines on these curved lines. Now, you'll notice that I've kind of got a weird white fill going on here. I don't want that because I want to be able to see the shape that I'm working with. So I'm actually going to come up here. There's multiple ways to work with color in Illustrator. And again, this is kind of one of those frustrating things, but I like to tell my students, if you can't show me 10 different ways to do the same thing within any Adobe platform, you're not a professional yet. So here's just another way to work with color. And really what I want to do is I want to turn the color off. I want it so that I actually don't see the color at all so that I can see what's behind it. So I'm going to go to my fill. Here you got fill and stroke. And I'm going to turn off the fill. Right here, this sort of blank box or this white box with the red line through it, that means none. So I'm going to turn that off and notice that down here, as long as I have this selected, the color goes away. I'm actually going to leave the stroke on so that I can still see what I'm working with, but I'm going to turn that stroke blue. Actually, you know what? Let's go for something a little brighter. Let's go yellow. That way I can sort of see how it's working with the shape behind it. I'm going to close this, close that, and now we're going to trace. Remember how I said that you will probably use the direct selection tool? Well, while you have the pen tool selected, you can actually access the direct selection tool pretty easily. All you have to do is hold Command or Control if you're on a PC. Command if you're on a Mac, Control if you're on a PC. From there, I can directly select an item and move it, okay? I'm not gonna do that here, but if I hold, whoops, hang on, now I really messed myself up. There we go, that's where Command Z comes into play. From here, I can sort of pick up where I left off. We're gonna start with this shape again, and we're gonna come in. In fact, let me start over. That way you guys can sort of see it from the beginning. So here, I'm going to go over the arc, catch it on the other side. I'm also going to reduce this anchor a little bit. I'm holding Command to do that because these anchors are grouped. So right now, if I move these anchors in and out, notice that the 2 points on either side are moving in tandem. If I want that to change, and let's say I want this anchor to be a little bit, the left anchor to be a little bit smaller, I could do that by holding Command or Control and then just shrinking it. If I want it to change angles, we'll cover that in a second. So right now, we're just going to keep it like this. I'm going to turn that off, make this yellow. And don't be afraid of starting over. That's kind of the beauty of Illustrator. If you get it wrong, don't worry. If you have to pick up an anchor point again, just redraw it, right? Select the anchor using the pen tool, redraw it. From there, maybe we can make this dip and start rough. Don't feel like you've got to get it perfect on the first pass. You can always come back in and revise it. You can edit as you go. Notice that I'm not perfectly along the line there, but we're going to get it there. Right here, maybe I've got that. Then we'll do this. Here we go. And then over here, we've got peak. Come up here. Here we go. So now I'm going to change the angle. Notice that my toggles here are actually doing different things now, right? Before, they're tied together, right? So the way that I did that was I held Option or Option on a Mac, Alt if you're on a PC, and then you can change the angle. That's really important because if you don't do that, they're going to stay stuck together. So get it where you want it. Hold Option or Alt, rotate. Oops, there we go. And then I'll come in here, I'll add this. Again, notice that's not perfect. I can come back and I can refine that later. And then here's the really important part. Always close your shapes. And the way that you do that is you have to come back to the original point and close it, right? So here I'll hold Option because again, I've got sort of a sharp, what is that called? That's a acute angle. So here I can come in and I can add that. And now let's come over here. Let's use my direct selection tool. That guy right there. And now I can come in and I can start refining these points a little bit. There we go. Maybe I bring this guy down a little bit. Same thing here. These two, I can actually select both points at the same time, hold Shift and select, and then I can sort of align them together so that they're perfectly aligned at the bottom. And then I can actually drag them together. So notice how those points are moving. That's because I selected those 2 points on their own using the direct selection tool. If I were to use just the selection tool, notice that you don't see the points. That is really the difference between the selection and the direct selection tool. It's how specific you want to be. If you want to select the whole shape, use the selection tool. If you want to select the individual points, use the direct selection tool. Now I can come in here, maybe we tighten this up a little bit around that corner, extend that a little bit, extend it on this side just a little. This arc right here it's a little high on the top, so let's maybe reduce that a little bit. Maybe we bring this point out. We can do even the same thing here, but notice if I left a line, that's way too far out, right? So there is a difference. We want to be really careful about how we are tracing this, because remember, if you're working with a brand, they want to make sure their logo looks exactly how it ought to look. You can't just go in and change it. So imagine like you're working for Apple when you're doing this assignment. It'll help your mentality around what the shape should be, trying to make it exact. Imagine that you've got a boss to please. Okay, cool. So I think we've got the general shape of the logo refined. Now we got to work on this sort of leaf shape up here. So again, we'll use the pen tool. I'm going to extend outwards, and then I'll sort of match this point up here. Again, I'll hold Option to make my angle a little bit more acute. Bring it down, close the shape. Oh no, what's happened there? Okay, that's fine. Let's just close the shape like that, right? Now, how do we change it? Again, I'll go back to my direct selection tool, A on the keyboard. I can grab this anchor, hold Option or Alt, and rotate it up. Nothing is permanent. We can always go back and refine a little bit. Maybe I want to, there we go. Maybe I want to bring this point down. Maybe I want to scoot this anchor up a little bit, right? You can always adjust until it's perfect. So there we've got our outlines, right? But now we need to make sure it's the right color. So I'm going to actually turn off my reference image layer. That way you don't even see what's there before. All you see is the outline, right? But then I'm going to select this, both of them together using my regular selection tool, V on the keyboard. I just click and drag over the whole thing, because if you just select one shape, it's not going to select the other. So another way that you can do it, you can either click and drag, or you can select, hold Shift, select the other item, right? Now, again, I mentioned that you can have fill or you can have stroke, right? So here's fill, here's stroke. I'm toggling that by hitting this sort of swap button over here on the color palette. But you can really make this any color. If you want it to be blue, you can do that. If you want it pink, do that. But for this assignment, let's just make it black. right? That's sort of the color that we worked with. That's sort of standard Apple. And there we go. We've got our Apple logo. It looks maybe a little different, but pretty darn close to what we started with. I can toggle on and off my reference image layer. But when you go to submit this, do make sure that your reference layer image is toggled off. I want to see that you know how to use this particular program. I want to see that you know how to use the pen tool. I want to see that you know how to use layers and the selection tool and the direct selection tool. So make sure to turn that layer off. Set your color to black. Over here, the best way to do that, rather than using these guys up here, there's actually a bunch of different types of black. We learned about key black in our color section of the design elements and principles. Here, I want you guys to set it to just a regular flat black. And the best way to do that is to use hex code. Since we're working in RGB color space, we can just type in 000, 000, and that will give us a nice flat black. Another way that you can do that, you can just type 3 zeros and that'll do the same thing. Okay, we already turned off our layer visibility there. I want you guys to save your work. The best way to do that, you can go to File, Save As right here, or you can hit Command-Shift-Save. I actually don't know what that is on PC. I think it's Control-Shift-Save or something like that. Make sure to name your file and save it somewhere that makes sense to you. There is file naming, or there are file naming requirements. I want you to save it using the specific file naming that I've given you guys. And then I also want you to save it both as an Illustrator file and as a PDF. So make sure to watch out for both of those, okay? If you have any questions, feel free to reach out. Let me know how I can help.